Hello, wonderful witches. I'm Colette here today from Witch Ways, and I want to share with you today some of the magic and associations associated with the elemental powers of earth, air, fire, and water, some of the ways you can work with them in your magic to enhance your spells and rituals. I hope you enjoy. This is such a huge topic, and today is just a 101 overview. I'm sharing them from my magical style, which is informal and a little bit ecstatic rather than formal or ceremonial. And you don't even have to work with elemental spirits if you don't want to. I also want to say that this is just the way that I do things in my magic, and other traditions, and there are many other traditions, do things really very, very differently when it comes to spirits and the elements. So as always, take what resonates for you. Today, they're often seen as the individual spirits of earth, air, fire, water, and sometimes center. Other traditions see them as sort of a raw, primal power related to the earth that they can call on at need, and other traditions that are more formal or more ceremonial might call in the guardians of those elemental realms. And that is a whole very simple breakdown of some of the different ways that people work with them. I see them as primal powers that do make up the earth. I also believe that they have their own realms that has a guardian that helps keep them in balance when they move into the human realm. And I also believe that within that realm there are many individual elemental spirits that make up the whole of that realm. Earth is associated with north in the style I work with, and it represents the power of the land, and its magic is vast and deep. I associate it with midnight, and it holds both the underworld and the fertile abundance side of the land. And our bodies are made from the materials that come from the earth, from the minerals, the fats, the bones, the broken down rocks, and I consider it one of our oldest ancestors. Earth is associated with grounding, and it can be called in, or you can create an altar for earth when you are doing any kind of spells for stability, protection, abundance, or ancestor work. In groups, we usually put the altar in the center when I'm working magic with other people, but in some traditions, the altar is put in the north as a way of representing that the earth is our actual living altar. You can represent your earth on your altar with rocks, dark or green colored cloths, or objects. Plants in general are really good, but especially roots, bones, coins, pentacles, and stones are also really good. We learn from earth through wisdom passed down orally from the old ones. Earth changes us through knowledge and magic embodied, and letting old things compost into wisdom. Air is associated with the east, and it represents the power of wind and sky. Its magic is sharp and clear and focused, and the time I associate with it is dawn. Air is associated with boundary and clarity for spells related to new beginnings, and sometimes with the overworld. We can call on the powers of air or make an altar that represents it when we are doing spells involving clarity, cutting things away from us, creating a clear break with something, or starting over in our lives when we are seeking inspiration or the skill of clear communication. Also, some banishing or releasing magic can be done with the assistance of air. Air can be represented on the altar by objects or cloths that are pastel colors or sky colored, things like bells, wind instruments, representations of or parts of winged creatures, knives or athames, which are the name for a ritual knife. And we learn from air by being taught in a way that is sort of academic and might include reading and research, and we are changed by air through our ability to see clearly and discern true from false. Fire is associated with the south, and its main power, I feel, is change and growth. I associate it with midday. We can use it to activate our magic by lighting candles, and we can call it in or create an altar for it whenever we are doing magic related to passion, love, sexuality, beauty, transformation, or any creative work. Fire is the most volatile of all the elemental energies, and it works very quickly. It can be represented on the altar by any flame or light, and sometimes by fire-making tools. It can also be represented by warm-colored cloths or object, anything related to art or sex, and it teaches us through sudden illumination, that aha moment, and it changes us through sudden radical change and complete transformation. I place water in the west, and it's associated with emotions and intuition. I also associate it with the time of sundown, and we can call on water or create an altar for it if we're working with any magic related to divination, dream work, gentle release, healing, or working with the emotions in any way. Water is a universal solvent, and water itself can be used as an offering. Just breathe your appreciation into it and then place that water on an altar to honor any kind of spirit or pour it out on the land. Water can be represented on an altar by watercolored cloth or objects, seashells, sea glass, representations of fish, chalices, glasses, bowls of water. It teaches us through divination, intuition, and visions, and it changes us by allowing us to gently and easily release what we no longer need. Center is a non-physical element that is not used in all witchcraft traditions. It represents spirits or ether. It's the fifth element. It's the thing that is between and connects all the other elements. My take on it is that it reminds me of infinity, dark matter, and timelessness. It's the space in between things, the pause between breaths. Sometimes it's represented on the altar with a cauldron, but usually I don't represent it. I like to think of it as something that is invisible, but is connecting us and is around us everywhere. We call on center when we need a broader perspective about what's happening in our lives, when we're trying to work with a new spirit ally, when we're seeking a new direction or are not sure what path to take or what type of magic we need to work with. Center teaches us by calling us to know ourselves. Center changes us by helping us to stand in our truth and personal authority. And I want to say thank you to the amazing fairy artist, Bryony Arnold, for collating the information that I shared in classes, writing it down and putting it on a beautiful illustration so I could use it as a handout and I would remember it. I'll put her Instagram account in the description and maybe on the screen as well so you can check out her magic if you want to. The way that people call elemental beings into circles is really different from tradition to tradition. My style's pretty informal and respectful, and what I do is center myself and invite them in by trying to feel their energy in my body. I invite them to join me, and then I welcome them when they show up. If I'm doing a spell related to one of the elements, I might spend a little bit more time calling that particular element in and ask them to bring some of their powers that are related to the spell work that I'm doing. For example, if I wanted to create a very special piece of magical art, I might spend some more time calling fire and ask them to bring their powers of passionate creativity into my work, or maybe I would ask them to fill the tools I'm using with those powers of creativity and passion. And elemental spirits can bring more powers to your spells, and like any spirit, it's important to keep the relationship reciprocal. I think it's really common for people to have an affinity for one element and not feel as comfortable with others. You can physically use any of the elements you choose to banish or release things. You can pick one that feels comfortable to you or one that seems like it will be helpful for the kind of releasing that you're doing. For example, fire can be used for releasing anything you want by writing it on a piece of paper and burning it. But you might choose another element depending on what you want to release. I tend to think of fire as the quickest acting, earth as the slowest, and water and air as somewhere in between. You can use air to release things that are stuck in your mind and you can't get out of your head, like offensive or hurtful words that someone spoke to you. You can also use air to release old stories that maybe family members or other people told about you. And you can do this by speaking those stories, words, or thoughts into the wind and asking the wind to take them away and remove them and break them down into harmless sounds. This is really helpful to do this from a place that's a little bit higher if you can, but it works anywhere that you can feel the wind around you. Of course, therapy is also really good for this, but adding in some extra magic can really help. I already talked about banishing with fire, but I'll mention it again here just so that we're all in the right order. To banish something with fire, write it down or draw it on a piece of paper or make a sigil or symbol of the thing that you want to release. Roll it up, maybe use some purifying herbs and burn it in a fireproof container, asking fire to banish the thing that you don't need. You can use water to release things by getting in water, like a hot tub, a bath, a shower, standing at the ocean edge, or swimming, and ask the water to dissolve anything that you want to release. And I find this is really helpful for emotional things that you're wanting to work through or let go of and that are a little bit stuck. Water is all about flow. If something is difficult, you can ask Earth to help you see it in a new way and learn from it. To do this, write your difficulty on a leaf, particularly in the autumn, and then bury it in the earth, asking the earth to compost this difficulty into the wisdom of experience. I don't work with center a lot for releasing, but I work with center if maybe I feel a need for all the elements to help me release things, or when I don't know where to turn for magical help. Another way to enhance your spells with elemental powers is to create an altar in whatever way that you usually do, but fill up the center with items that represent the element that you want to work with, and then place your spell on it and let it fill up with that energy of that element before you activate or complete your spell. Or you can just leave that spell there in the center until the spell is done. I'd love it if you put your experience and views about working with elemental spirits, or just simply say whether you work with them or not in the comments below. Make an offering to the algorithm gods if you choose. It really helps my channel by liking, and maybe consider subscribing or hitting that notification bell. I'd also love it if you would consider checking out my Patreon page. The links are in the description. Until next time, thank you for watching, stay safe, and be well.